Outie does muscle shows for sure. My delts are embarrassingly good today.
For the love of Kier, please just sever me till season 2 comes out, because this finale was one of the best I've seen in a long time. In this video, we'll be taking a look at the show's biggest unanswered questions, season 2 theories that will have you begging for a waffle party, and if you play your cards right, you may even get a handshake.
Thank you, may I have a handshake?
I've left timestamps below so you can see all the topics we'll be covering in this video, and you'll want to like and subscribe because I'll soon be coming out with a video detailing all the hidden clues throughout the season. Here we go. The finale begins with our innies successfully engaging in what's called the overtime contingency, allowing them access to their bodies in the outside world. It's revealed that Helly R is in fact Helena Eagan, the daughter of Lumen Industries CEO James Eagan, who we've actually seen in mannequin form back in episode 3. Her being severed is all part of a publicity stunt to show how safe and effective severing can be.
And I would never ask them to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself.
This is why Milchick is so happy when Helena, or should I say Helly, arrives on her first day.
When we heard you were coming here, it was like a miracle. It's amazing what you're doing.
It's also why we see him taking photographs of her in the office throughout her stay. The act of severing is highly contentious, with several states banning the practice altogether, so Helena has taken this drastic step to show the world how we shouldn't fear it. The problem is, severing is cruel. Helena's innie is so desperate to escape she tries to kill herself, but I think there's something deeper here, that Helena is also doing this to appease her father. As we've seen in the Hall of Perpetuity, Lumen CEOs all belong to the Eagan family. Although we haven't seen the real Helena in the outside world, she must have a tremendous sense of familial obligation and pride, something her father reiterates to her.
The grandfather would cherish what you've done.
The grandfather here likely refers to Kier Eagan, the founder of Lumen, and fun fact, the name Kier derives from Gaelic meaning the Dark One. Helena ironically means shining light in Greek, while Helly literally means hellish. Check out this shot here where we can see the word hell clearly made out. I guess it makes sense then that the first image we see of Helly is of her on a coffin-shaped table in an episode titled Good News About Hell. Speaking of Helena's father, I should also mention that those who attend the break room often recount hearing something in the background while reciting the compunction statement, that weird apology thing Helly recites into the mirror. Dylan says that when he's in the break room, he's heard a baby crying, which could be one of his 2 other children if Milchick is to believe that Dylan has 3 kids. Helly, however, heard the sound of a mumbling, angry man. Could that person be her father? In her brief interaction in the outside world, we're also reintroduced to Gabby and Angelo Arteta. Gabby was the woman Devon met who underwent severance so she wouldn't have to live through the pain of giving birth. Her husband is a pro-severance senator, so it makes sense that someone like Helena and the Eagans would want to be close to people in positions of power. In Helly's final moments as her outie, she proclaims to everyone at the Eagan family gala that everything they know about severance is a lie and that the innies are being tortured. Now this may seem like a deeply calamitous event, but keep in mind this is a private friends and family of the Eagans event. This little blip can be easily covered up. Plus, if anything does leak to the media, it's likely to be suppressed, as Lumen seems to have insiders in all aspects of the media. On March 18th, Apple released a companion book to the TV series called Severance: The Lexington Letter. I'll leave a link to it in the description below for those interested. It's a tell-all story about a woman who was able to bypass the code detectors and pass along notes to her outie. She reached out to a reporter at a newspaper to tell her story and expose Lumen, but one of the editors there suppressed the story. The name of that editor? Jim Milchick. If this book is to be believed, it implies that Seth Milchick has family on the outside that also is involved in covering up Lumen's nefarious deeds. Perhaps even more mysterious than Helena is Irving's outie. On the inside, Irving is arguably Kier's biggest supporter, being able to recite passages from the handbook from memory and a stalwart rule follower. It's pretty interesting then that on the outside he's the opposite, trying to expose Lumen. Let's take a look at some of the interesting things we find in his apartment. First, there's his dog Radar. This was actually hinted at back in episode 3 when Irving attends a wellness meeting.
Your outie likes the sound of radar.
Irving also has a number of what appears to be military medals. We aren't sure if these are his or those of his father's, who seems to have been in the US Navy. If Irving was in the military, it's possible he chose to sever to escape some form of PTSD. In fact, art therapy is one of the ways in which PTSD sufferers process traumatic events in a new way. I'll get back to his black elevator paintings later on in the video. But the big shocker here is that Irving has a locked chest filled with interesting goodies. First is this news article about a man suing Lumen for workplace injuries, claiming that Lumen hid the real cause of the loss of feeling in his finger. He received a letter on his windshield explaining that it was due to a printer-related injury, similar to when Mark got one on his windshield after Helly threw an intercom at him. More importantly is this list of severed employees that Irving has been tracking. Here we can see Dylan G's name, but it's actually the names we never see that are more interesting. There is no mention of Miss Casey or Mark's wife, Gemma Scout, and I'll get to why that may be in a bit. It's completely possible that Irving has or was working with former Lumen employee Petey and or Ragabi. In episode 3, Petey tells Mark that someone helped him escape and that there are people out there wanting to expose Lumen. This could be Ragabi, Irving, or both. Petey even says to Mark that at Lumen,
"I'm your best friend. You're my very good friend."
This is such a weird thing to say. It's almost as if Petey is implying he has a best friend on the inside that isn't Mark, and that person could be Irving. Along with the employee list is a map of Keir, Pennsylvania, with a number of locations of Keir employees, or at least that's what's implied considering Burt Goodman, the man Irving fell in love with on the inside, is on that map. Now, it may be coincidence, but all the names on the map are men. Irving will later drive to Burt's, but has his heart crushed to see him with another man. And it's gonna be super awkward when Burt opens the door to find Irving, who is banging on it, transformed back into his regular outie self. In Season 2, expect us to find out more about Irving's investigation. At the end of Episode 7, we learn that Miss Casey, the wellness counselor, is Mark Scout's wife, Gemma. It's only when he's transported to the outie world that he finds this out, and that she's still alive. The whole reason Mark chose to have his life severed was to escape the pain of dealing with his wife's death. The first scene we see of Mark is him grieving her in his car, using a tissue to wipe away his tears. A tissue he'll find in his innie's pocket and throw away like nothing into a nearby waste receptacle, a metaphor for him throwing away his grief. But as his sister tells him, this is only a band-aid solution for something much larger.
Forgetting about her for 8 hours a day isn't the same thing as healing.
If Mark is truly going to heal, he'll need to realize that severance isn't the solution. There isn't much we know about Miss Casey. She supposedly died in a car accident, but my guess is that Lumen picked her up to be experimented on. After all, Lumen started as a healthcare company and likely owns many hospitals. Unlike the other employees, we never see Miss Casey in the outside world. I believe she never leaves Lumen. That dark hallway with an elevator that only points downward, that may be where she lives. In episode 3, Petey says he found a department at Lumen where no one leaves, and on his map he has a section that reads, "Some people might live here." If this is the case, Miss Casey lives in a perpetual state of severedness, never being able to return to her real outie self. If a company were able to do this to one person, think of the effects it could have on millions. James Eagan tells Helly that he one day wishes every person on the planet will have one of these chips in them, which hints at what Lumen's end game is: full control. And this leads me into what those numbers Macrorefinement spends all their time inputting. For more insight into this, we have to go back to the Lexington letter I mentioned in the first section. In it, the INI whistleblower notes that she finished a Macrorefinement file called Lexington at 2:30 p.m. Just 2 minutes later, a truck belonging to a Lumen competitor, Dorner Therapeutics, exploded, destroying several Dorner devices and killing 6 people. Although the whistleblower concedes this could just be a coincidence, the timing is very close. Could this encrypted data the Macrorefinement department sorts be triggering dangerous events in the outside world, such as a bomb going off, hence the secrecy behind their jobs? This may also explain some of the items we see Optics and Design creating with their 3D printers. It's noted that last week they were instructed to make items that were, quote, particularly violent. These included hatchets, but this week's it's watering cans, so who knows? The numbers themselves are sorted into 4 categories: WO, numbers that make you sad; FC, numbers associated with happiness and joy; DR, numbers that scare you; and MA, numbers that make you angry. These line up with Kier's 4 tempers: woe, frolic, dread, and malice. Kier believed the 4 tempers make up every human soul, and depending on what kind of race you have, it determines your character. It is said that Kier was able to tame these tempers, which gave him power, and that power he wants to pass on to his children. The 4 tempers are represented in physical form by the weird dancers Dylan is treated to after his waffle party. One of these is a goat, and goats appear all over the show, most notably in the goat department and in weird background sculptures. Historically, goats have symbolized everything from virility and sacrifice to Satanism, so it's not really clear yet why Lumen would have a whole area reserved for raising them. One of the more interesting characters this season is Miss Cobel, or should I say Selvig, who straddles the innie and outie world. At face value, it seems like she's a valuable Lumen employee, even telling Helly before she goes on stage that what she's done will result in her and the other innies being tortured. But there's another theory out there that frames Cobel in a completely different light, one that actually has her being Lumen's worst nightmare.
Tell me more.
We know that Cobel has a shrine to Kier, or at least that's what we think it is. What if it's actually a shrine to her mother? We get this brief shot of a breathing tube and a hospital tag with what appears to be her mother's name. In the Lexington letter, we learn that these breathing tubes were made by Lumen and they had defects. So could Miss Cobel be planning revenge on Lumen for the death of her mother? This would explain her huge freakout after being fired. She had spent years working her way up in Lumen undercover, gathering info, and now it was all going to be for nothing. By stopping Helly and calling Milchek to interrupt Dylan, Cobel is maneuvering her way back into Lumen. I mean, they have to bring her back as a reward for single-handedly stopping what could have been one of the most disastrous events in Lumen history. This would also put her in a position next season to control the innies and work alongside them to bring Lumen down. One of the weirdest moments in the finale was when Mark and Patton discover Devon's baby, and Patton hustles past Mark exclaiming to everyone that he was the one to find the baby first. Like, who says that? Who even cares so long as the baby is found? There is something almost childlike about all of Rickon's friends. We have Rebecca, who has a bird who pecks at her head, Patton, who can't even recall why historians before World War II didn't call the Great War World War I.
Because World War II hadn't happened yet?
Of course. That's absolutely duh.
And everyone seems infatuated with Rickon's obviously terrible book. But when Outie Mark meets Rickon, it's like he's meeting his hero. That's because his book, The UUR, has become a sort of anti-Lumen handbook for him. Remember, it has lines like,
Your job needs you.
what if Rickon's friends are all severed people who have been reintroduced back into the public with wiped memories? Hence why they don't have a lot of basic knowledge and have warped opinions that have been shaped by their lives at Lumen. Patton saying he found the baby first is like him wanting to be rewarded for doing a good job, just like workers at Lumen are rewarded with egg and melon parties for their good work. This would also explain why they're also taken in by Rickon's book, because it's giving them alternate opinions about the world other than the ones they've been indoctrinated with. So is everyone chipped? I don't think so. However, I think a lot more of them are than we're led to believe. There are 2 other things I want to mention before we end. The first is when James Eagan says the words, the Revolving. James Eagan tells Helena that he looks forward to her being alongside him during this event. We don't really know what this is, but it seems to be some sort of ceremony. If I were to hazard a guess, it's when a new successor takes control of the company, perhaps at the old successor's death, and the old one becomes remembered as a wax mannequin in the Hall of Perpetuity. James would pass on the CEO title to Helena, and the process becomes like a revolving door with one Eagan family member replacing another. The second thing I want to discuss, which has huge implications for Season 2, is Mark telling Devon about Lumen. This is our first non-Lumen, non-severed individual who now knows about the dangers of this program. She's also just found out that her sister-in-law, the person who helped make her brother quote-unquote wonderful, is still alive. Expect her to join forces with some of our other characters to take Lumen on. I had an absolute blast watching this first season. I will be coming out with more Severance videos, so be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on your thoughts and theories about the show below. Thanks for watching, everyone. For more bad takes, you can catch me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT, and until next time, remember,
Let's burn this place to the ground.